Hey guys, and welcome to episode 161 of the OCDStories.com podcast. Now, in this episode, I got back on several time guest, Chrissie Hodges. Chrissie is a peer support coach, author, and OCD advocate. She also won the Hero Award from the IOCDF in 2017. So it's good to have her back on, and I got her on just for an update, but also to talk about her event, the Gamechangers, which is happening in Denver, in Colorado, in a couple weeks. So on it, she gives an update on her story in this episode. We then look back at the Gamechangers event 2018. I give my personal opinion on it. We kind of break it down, why it was good, what was good about it. Then we go on to talk about Gamechangers 2019, kind of why she themed it the emotional side. So it's largely going to be about emotions this year, and that we really go deep into that topic. So that if that's something you feel that relates to you, I think you'll enjoy that. Then also what you can expect from this year, how you can get involved, whether you're in Colorado or if you can't get to Colorado, how you can get involved from wherever you are in the world. We also talk about that Gamechangers is about empowering advocates. So kind of she gives her words to hopeful advocates on how they can start advocacy. We talk about the importance of bringing community together to instill hope, and then what she's learned from doing peer support over the last year, and then the usual questions towards the end. As always, Chrissie doesn't disappoint, and I think you will enjoy this. So thank you as always for listening, and without further ado, here is Chrissie. On the podcast today, I have Chrissie Hodges. Chrissie is a mental health advocate and public speaker, peer support coach, and author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder. Chrissie was awarded the Hero Award at the 24th IOCDF conference in San Fran. Welcome back to the show, Chrissie.
Thank you, Stu. It's always a pleasure to be here talking with you.
It's good to have you on. It's been quite a while, I think, now since I've interviewed you. Obviously, Jess interviewed you not too long ago on this show.
Yes.
And I'll link to that for those that haven't heard it. But yeah, since we last spoke on this podcast, what's your story been like since we spoke? OCD story, I should say.
Oh my. Oh gosh. This is such a big question. Learning, I think, the deeper and the longer I live with OCD, that there's always more room for recovery, which is something that I've really gotten to a point to appreciate versus be angry about. Meaning originally wanting it just to be all gone and life be normal. I've now, I think, officially made the shift in the last couple years of recovery really is ongoing, and it really can benefit us to continue to learn about who we are living with OCD or any mental illness for that matter. Especially for me, coming to terms with living with addiction and substance use in the last couple years. I would say the last year it's been really prevalent, and I've lived with addiction for a very long time, completely in denial, kind of wanting to dabble out of denial, but too afraid to find out what that would mean about me and what that would say about me. So kind of going back into that closet and saying, oh no, everything's fine. And essentially last summer, everything coming to a screeching halt. When you live with addiction for a long time, which is covering up, typically it's going to be trauma and shame. At some point you are going to come to a halt. And for me, that was emotionally, physically, mentally, everything. There was one point last summer, I think I was laying on the sofa in the evening trying to relax, and I could not relax my body into the couch. I'd had an injury. I'd have injuries for years in my feet, and, not being able to function at night without having alcohol. And it really got to a point where I thought, I can't keep living like this. I physically can't keep living like this. And had a couple revelations that I don't really want to go into on the podcast, but read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And then also went to the International OCD Foundation annual conference, and Jamie Valdez on a panel for OCD and Addiction said the words, addiction stems from shame. And those words changed my entire life. All of a sudden it was, I don't have to, I can take responsibility for my actions, but there is a reason why. And that began the exploration of the reason why, which a lot of it digs back into OCD and my whole story, but mainly the trauma of living with OCD, which oftentimes we don't address and we don't want to look at because we just want symptoms to be gone.
Yeah.
And so now in my recovery is the time to look back, reflect, and really heal the person that I was that was experiencing OCD alone. And then after a suicide attempt and hospitalization, and after the impact of people finding out and their response to it and the trauma that that caused, now is the time in my recovery to address that. And I have been addressing it head on for the last 6 months. And it has been incredible and amazing. And I wish I'd done it sooner, but I just wasn't ready. And sometimes we aren't ready till we're ready.
That is true. Well, thank you for sharing and being open with that. Okay, so we've also got you started the OCD Gamechangers event last year in Denver, Colorado, USA. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of that, and it was a great event. And you've obviously got it coming up again in a couple of weeks. So before we get into 2019, it'd just be good for those that know nothing about it, and just a review of 2018.
Okay. So, and it's interesting because this is a question that I've really been addressing this year in the marketing piece, because people go, what does Gamechangers even mean? And why are you doing this? And let's just say in 2018, it was a pipe dream of, what if I had all these advocates fly out and we spent the weekend together and we did a mastermind group, which is us all getting together, talking about our projects, talking about obstacles, and then formulating plans and support on how to help progress all of our dreams and ideas by using other people's perspective. And then we did this big event. It is, by the way, I modeled it after a good friend of mine, Chad James, who he invited me to do an event. He calls it the Hype Event. And it was for small business owners a couple years ago. And I came away with it hugely inspired and thought, what if I did this with OCD advocates? So in 2018, it really was, can this work? Will it work? And are people going to come? There was no other goal than that. And to hopefully break even and all the money that I spent on the event, which all of those things happened. But the bigger picture was, it gave me an even greater vision of what this could be. It wasn't just an event, not only the mastermind and us spending the weekend together, but the event in itself. It wasn't just for the advocates. It all of a sudden became about all of the people who are living with OCD in the audience, all of the people who are family members of people with OCD in the audience, the therapists in the audience. And it was magical, and it far exceeded my expectations. I was like, if 20 people show up, yay. And then we ended up having, I think it was between 85 and 90 that showed up. And it was just, other than me losing my keys afterwards, it was, that was not the highlight of the evening, but it was magical. And it showed me that there's a greater need for this, and that really I want to create an event not only to share that hope is there and that it's real, but also that you could turn something that for some people was so devastating and sometimes felt so hopeless, but you can turn it into something to reach thousands and millions of people all around the world. And that is what the event, I feel like, in my own words or in my own experience, that's what I feel like it accomplished. What do you think that it accomplished?
Yeah, good point. Or good points, I should say there. Yeah, what do I think it accomplished? For me, yeah, I thought it was a very kind of hopeful event, like being on stage, sharing my story and some of the thoughts I had about just, I guess, life and recovery was. Yeah, I guess I'm lost for words because there's ways I want to express it, but I haven't necessarily thought it out. There was stuff that I shared at that conference that it hadn't really been on my mind, but I think it was very much there. And that conference, being around the other 7 or however many advocates it was the day before the event, you know, sharing their energy, hearing their stories, hearing what they're doing to kind of raise awareness of OCD treatment and decrease stigma, really kind of opened something up in me, or made what was unconscious conscious. And I shared stuff on that stage that I never predicted I would have. And for me, it was very real. And I think that was the case for lots of people. It wasn't this, you know, I'm on this panel and I'm going to talk. What came out in pretty much all of those talks, if not all of them, was something very real and very true. And I think that was set up by the day before around being with others and connecting. And I think you don't actually get that at other events. So for me, and then you know, meeting people that had listened to the podcast or people that hadn't, but then came up to me to talk about what I said on stage was very meaningful. And it is quite an intimate event. You know, in a few years that may change, but for now, it's quite an intimate event, and I think that has a lot of benefits, especially for those with social anxiety.
Yes, and that's what I loved about it the most was I think no one really knew what to expect. So it's I like to say that that even the air felt like static electricity, because we walked in there going, we have no idea who's going to show up, and oh my gosh, we have to set up all these chairs and hopefully we can make the screen work. So no one really had time to think about what was going to happen, and I think out of that was born magic. And for me it really set my sights bigger, not meaning like, oh, I want this to be the biggest event ever, but how far can we go with this? How many countries can we go with this? Because we need it in more places than just Denver, Colorado. Yeah. We need it everywhere. We need people to be able to be in a room with dozens of other people who experience the same thoughts and the same anxiety, and they can say, oh my gosh, it is true. I'm not alone. And I feel like last year communicated that to the best possible degree I could have ever anticipated. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And it'd be great to see how these do. I mean, I'm sure it'd all been always nice to have it once a year in Denver, because that's kind of the home of it.
Yes.
And obviously it's easier for you because you live there or around Denver. But yeah, it would be great to see how it transitions maybe to the UK, maybe Mexico, maybe, I don't know, wherever else.
Yes, the UK. That would be the first international destination.
Yeah. Well, it speaks the same language, so there's not that barrier.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's thank you for that review, and yeah, I think it was, for me, it was a special weekend, and yeah, and I believe many people got something out of it, and obviously those that didn't attend, some people bought access to the video at a later date, and you know, I heard from people that had listened to that, so it was great to kind of connect with people that couldn't get there as well.
Yes, and we plan on doing that again this year. Okay. It's just for the price of an evening ticket, which is $40. We will be selling the video. That was what I really loved about it, was even if you couldn't attend the event, people still got the opportunity to have access to those personal stories. And even so, they can listen to them in the comfort of their own home, because oftentimes people don't want to venture out. They don't, some people are nervous about even coming to the event because they don't want to identify with OCD. So it is an opportunity to be able to purchase the event afterwards and watch it whenever you need it. Not for reassurance, but just maybe when you're feeling lonely or you're feeling in symptoms and you really need to know, okay, there are other people out there, hear their stories, and I see that these people have been where I've been, and look at them now. And many of us, none of us on that stage said we don't still struggle at times, but we are able to show it is possible to move past those depths of OCD and continue to live a life that's full and even give back when we get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on that reassurance point, I mean, I can't pinpoint many or any of the talks that were actually, everyone shared their story initially, but then they were talking about various things towards the end. And like for me, I was talking about self-love predominantly, because that was something that was important to me. It still is. It's not something it's not important anymore, but it was really on my mind, so it's what I wanted to share and talk about. And that's not necessarily an OCD message. That's a general mental health message or mental well-being message. So I think it's good in that sense. You won't necessarily get reassurance from the talks, which is a good thing.
Right.
But you'll hear other ways of looking at life and mental health and mental well-being, which 100% plays into OCD in a good way. But yeah, it's not like talking about uncertainty necessarily, or I'm sure some of them did. I just can't remember.
Yes. And then this year, we have 2 parents that are presenting.
Oh, cool.
So it's ways to support the support system because, as Ethan said last year, the OCD is a family disorder at times. And so, we'll have the perspective of parents who have turned that struggle around to do their own advocacy. I'm going to be talking about addiction. We have Dr. Patrick McGrath there this year as a therapist, Jamie Valdez talking about OCD and addiction because we know that it impacts 25%, if not more, of people who live with all types of addiction, whether that be substance use or drugs or porn or sex or food or gambling or whatever else. All of this needs to be addressed. And Gamechangers, again, because of the title, it's changing the game of how we're approaching OCD, how we're educating OCD. And part of that is going to be bringing these topics to light, like OCD and addiction, where people need to know they're not alone and people need to know there's treatment and that you don't have to feel shame about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a little tangenty, sorry.
No, it's fine. So you kind of started there. So Gamechangers 2019, you themed it the emotional side.
Yes.
So I'm guessing that's the emotional side of OCD. Is that fair to say?
Well, okay. The reason why I themed it this is, and I guess following along with what peer support does mostly, which is what I do, supporting individuals worldwide and helping to normalize what they're experiencing and the emotional side. And I've probably talked about this before on the podcast, but I'll mention it again. OCD is not just physical, and most of the time it's impacting us emotionally. It's if I have intrusive thoughts about, killing my cat or dog sitting here, if I don't have an emotion attached to it, it's just a really effed up thought that I go, wow, I hope I don't have that again. But when the emotion hits of what kind of person would have that thought and what does that mean about me and am I a bad person, that's when we get to spiraling. And I think the hard part is there's so many layers of emotion when it comes to OCD and the downward spiral we experience. So there's that firsthand emotion that terrifies us about why we're experiencing this. And then there's the secondary of, oh my God, I even had these thoughts. That really means I'm a bad person. So in healing from OCD and getting better with OCD, all of those layers of the emotional side of it have to be addressed. And you can't address that by just doing exposures, and doing the behavioral work, because emotional healing really isn't behavioral work. Emotional healing is, I am not alone. Other people have experienced this. Other people have had these thoughts and they're not bad people. So what does that say about me? Oftentimes people will say to me, well, I have to be a bad person because I have thoughts about whether or not I'm a pedophile. What kind of bad? This means I am inherently a bad person. And I say straight up back to them, oh, that's sad. That must mean that you think I'm a bad person. No, you're not a bad person. And I'm like, no, but I feel the same way. I think the same things. I experience the same experience. And in hearing that, people can say, oh, it's almost like inviting logic into it when OCD isn't logic based, and so it's really meeting people emotionally and saying it's okay to feel this way and it's okay to feel sad and it's okay to feel anger. And most of us go through that with OCD. And most of us need to heal from that. And we need to grieve what OCD has taken from us. Because as non-victim-y as I can sound, we get our lives taken from us. The things that most of us, when we're younger, think the greatest moments of our life are going to be X, Y, and Z. Maybe that's not a good way to look at life, but whatever. It's a reality, right? So when you're on your wedding day and it's supposed to be the greatest day of your life and you're in the room before you walk down the aisle worrying if you're gay, like, did I turn gay? Am I supposed to be getting married? That's OCD. Taking that memory from you. It's taking that day from you. It's hijacking. And you will remember that for years to come. And that is an emotional scar that all of us need to know that we're not alone with. Because those are the things that really don't get addressed in behavioral therapy. And we think when symptoms are done, OCD is done. And I really want this year to drive home the point that, just like I said at the beginning of this podcast, recovery can be lifelong, but recovery, you can turn over stones that you can continue to heal, you continue to face, and continue to, really look that trauma and stuff in the face that OCD caused us, and know that you can continually heal and get better from. So the emotional side to me is the most personal, and I really want to emphasize that this year, because people often get tripped up when they get treatment and then they're like, I still don't feel good. And it's important for us to know that you can continue to work on yourself and get better, and you can grieve through this and come out a better person on the other end.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree more. Who was it? I was at the OCD UK conference late last year, and Paul Selflove, he therapist and researcher in this country, or clinical psychologist, and he talked about the majority of the work he does in treating OCD, and obviously he uses ERP as the primary therapy, or CBT with ERP, and but he said a bulk of his work is, treating the symptoms are somewhat straightforward. It's the collateral damage that OCD causes is where the bulk of his work goes.
Yes.
The kind of wake of destruction, so to speak, that it can leave behind.
And that's why, introducing, panels this year with therapists that do acceptance commitment therapy, so we can talk about other treatment options that are not just addressing the behavioral stuff, but also keeping intact, your values, and understanding doing the work to get better from OCD. It does not have to, completely, split you in half as a person, that you can still keep intact, that you are a good person, even though that you had this illness. So that's what I'm hoping for this year, is for people to walk away and say, number one, I'm not alone. Number two, there is hope, but also, wow, it is okay if I have more work to do, and I can continue to get better, and I can heal from all the things that OCD has taken from me. And I can't really remember what John Hirschfeld said about it on a video I did with him earlier, but he was kind of addressing the same things, is, you cannot get back some of the things that OCD has taken from you. I'm totally paraphrasing, by the way. But one of the things that he said is, you can't stay in that spot and continue to let OCD hijack every memory. Yeah. So at some point you have to let it go. And I think a lot of that comes with grieving. And I think that's, for many of us, we don't understand the benefit of grieving it, and we need support and learning how to grieve it. So I'm hoping people walk away and can see all of us up there talking about how we've been able to grieve it, and then they can give themselves permission to experience that too.
Yeah, good point. You can't go back in time. Not yet, anyway. Maybe one day we'll have some time travel.
I never want to go back.
No, you're right. But yeah, so like we can't go back in time, but we can control today, and today affects tomorrow, and so on and so on, and tomorrow will affect the day after, and so we can't change the past, but we can do our damnedest to make sure we change the future. We'll change the present, which change the future, etc., etc. But Yeah. I think the emotional side is very important, and I think also maybe what I predict from this year is hearing all those talks as well as the therapist during the day is it will just normify, if that's a word. Normalize is the word I was looking for. I'm going to go and normify. It's okay to be wrong. I'm going to normalize like difficult emotions, and I think you hear people a lot. Oh, but especially people who maybe they know a lot about OCD treatment, but for whatever reason they're getting stuck on an emotion again, and it's not necessarily anxiety. It could be guilt, shame, whatever.
Anger,
absolutely. And it just feels so terrible, and and that they're really fixated on it. And I think a lot of the time is because the belief system is it's not okay to have this emotion. And I'm predicting and hoping that the talks this year will kind of somewhat show that, yeah, it's not nice, it's not comfortable, but it's okay to be angry from time to time. It's okay to feel this emotion of guilt. It doesn't necessarily mean you have anything to feel guilty about. It's just an emotion, and that's okay. It's not going to kill you.
Well, and a great example of that is, and not everybody experiences this, but I experienced it, and many other people do, when you find, regardless of how long you live with OCD before you found out it was OCD and that there's treatment, people think to themselves, well, I found out that I had OCD, I had access to treatment, now I'm done with treatment, I know how to manage it, but I'm pissed. And then that you think, but I shouldn't be pissed because look how lucky I was. And look how, I should be happy that now I know how to manage it. And they bury those feelings of anger because they don't feel entitled to be angry, because it's almost an entitlement to be able to get treatment and to get better. And so for years and years, that was the main emotion that I buried. I did not allow myself to be angry. And every time I would feel it, I would then label myself as selfish. So here we are again, layer upon layer upon layer of these horrendous emotions. When in reality, if I'd just been like, I'm pissed from day one, I would have moved through that emotion so much quicker and been able to feel it and validate that little girl inside of me that was so pissed that I developed OCD when I was 8 years old and it ruined my childhood and my teenage years. She went for years without being validated until I learned it was okay to be angry. And that's when the real healing started for me. And so and peer support helps with that so much. I often say to people, it's maybe as condescending as this sounds, but I don't mean it that way. I'm giving you permission to be angry and to be sad. And I'm right here telling you that I'm angry and sad for you and with you. And it helps.
Yeah, I agree. Something that came up for me as you were talking, and maybe this is what I'll do my talk on this year, is there's also, for me, something I experienced was the comparison, and I would constantly compare my own suffering. Even saying that word I find difficult, right? So comparing my suffering to others, and but I didn't do this, or it wasn't as bad as this, or that person's And by doing that, even if that is true, by doing that, I've now shut down my right to feel pain, and sad, and victimized. And then all I've done is repress those emotions, which isn't going to be healthy for me in the long run. And I've spent the last 2 years in therapy kind of working through those things. I'm unashamed to admit it. But that was really repressed for me, because it was like, I don't have a right to complain because it wasn't as bad as someone else's.
Well, I'm going to #normify it for you.
Thank you. There's a mental health brand there.
I cannot tell you how many people I meet with that say the same things, Stu. That say the same. They'll even say to me, well, I just didn't have it as bad as you because you had a suicide attempt. And I'm like, what? You were stuck in the bathroom for 18 hours a day. So maybe I don't have it as bad as you, so it is this comparative nature, and that feeds the uncertainty that we do even have OCD or not, which does not help. So it's, breaking down or just making it known that it's not beneficial and it's not helpful. Comparative OCD is not good. And trauma is trauma. It does not matter. Oftentimes people will catch OCD early, right as they have symptoms. And then if I'm giving them support, they're like, I know, but I didn't suffer for X amount of years. And I'm like, don't you even worry about that. If you suffered for an hour, it's too much. Trauma is trauma, and we all feel the same with OCD. It's all the same. Anxiety is the same. It feels like shit. It feels awful. And so I don't want to suffer an hour. I don't want you to suffer an hour. So I don't care how long you've suffered. We're both equal here. And we both deserve treatment. And we both deserve to feel like we're not alone and that there's hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So we've unpacked like some of the stuff that people can expect. But yeah, just go over again kind of how it differs this year and if people get a day ticket versus an evening ticket, etc.
So this year I decided to expand it. And that also in turn expands my anxiety. I'm just putting it out there. So I decided, and kind of my vision for this has turned into, I want to do an all-day event at some point. So this year I started with a half-day event. So there's two options. You can come for the half-day, which starts at 2, and that ticket's $65. Also the point of Gamechangers is to keep it as affordable as I can, because people, can hardly afford treatment. And so, I do want them to be able to attend and be able to benefit from the community that we're creating without, having to dole out hundreds of dollars, especially if you're traveling. Wanted to have it in Denver the time that I did, because this is off season for Denver. Right in between right at the end of February and the beginning of March. That's kind of a lull in the ski season. So tickets to fly in are less. It's after the Broncos. So it's after, Super Bowl or whatever. And it's before the Rockies. So there's nothing going on in Denver. So
Denver
it is
Nuggets.
Well, I mean, they're great, but
it's the only sport that matters.
But anyway, so it is the off season. So this is a great time to travel to Denver if you're going to spend the money. So trying to keep the tickets low and affordable for individuals and families that want to come. So this year you can attend the full day, which is 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. Or you can attend the evening event. Oftentimes people with social anxiety or people that haven't really identified kind of out of the OCD closet, they don't want to just be out there. So if they really just want to attend the evening event, I also gave that option at a discounted price at $40. So that's 7 to 9, doors open for them at 6. And then for us, 2:00, that's when the first panel starts. Still haven't announced the panels, but that will happen soon. We are going to have one on OCD treatment. So we're going to talk about ACT. We're going to talk about ERP. We're going to talk about some mindfulness. All panels will have therapists and advocates on them. We will have a panel on OCD addiction, kind of a Q&A, talking about treatment for that, and then just talking about the emotional side of living with OCD addiction. And then we're going to run another panel, but that is to be determined. And then we do, Stu, this year, we are going to have some activities for kids, because we have had inquiries for, kind of preferably a little bit older, maybe 10, 11 or older. But Chris Bear is going to run the Unstuck movie. Yay. And then we're probably going to all collaborate in the afternoon during some of the panels, the advocates, to really just hang out with the kids and do some projects on how, to help them understand what OCD is, help them know that they're not alone. How do they identify it inside of themselves and the emotions associated with it, and do some creative projects for that. Then we will have a break. Anyone that signs up for the full day will get, I'm going to provide light dinner. It's BYOB. So if people want to bring some wine or something, they're more than welcome to bring it. We're not selling it at the event, but if people want to do that, that's fine. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a little, during the dinner portion, some Pictionary with intrusive thoughts. So it could get very ERP in there. So that'll be fun. And then just kind of, I really want the day portion to be relaxed, so we can all connect and people can talk and get to know each other. Because that was one piece that was missing last year. It was kind of the boom, here's the event, and then everybody's gone. And so people only had about 30 minutes to talk to advocates and to even really see who all was in the room. So this year I want it to be, we're all congregating, we're all creating community, we're all getting to know each other on a deeper level. And I really think that will feed over into the evening event and get people really excited for next year to want to attend again.
Yeah, no, sounds great. And as you said earlier, for those that can't get to Denver, or for some reason have beef with Denver and don't want to visit it, they can, of course, get the video, which I'm sure you'll publicize after.
There's two ways that you can be part of this event and not get here. The first way, of course, is going to be to purchase the video after. We'll have that up and running and ready to go about a week or so afterwards. We do have to get it edited and processed and out. So, keep a look on my all of my stuff on Instagram and Facebook to be able to find out when that comes available. The second is a little campaign that I'm running right now, and I'm only running it until February 20th, which is 7 days from now. Right now, what I'm doing is I have a lot of people that have reached out to me that say, I want to be part of the event, but I can't come, but I want to contribute. Well, I'm not a 501c3 yet. We'll talk about that the next time I'm on the podcast. But yes, that's a charity, a nonprofit. But I wanted to give the opportunity for people to give to the community, to be part of it and to help be an inspiration of hope too. And also to give them something back. I don't feel comfortable just taking people's donation to sponsor the event. So what we're doing is we are creating a journal, OCD Gamechangers, the first journal of hope. So this journal will be created after the event is over. We will be collecting quotes from people, all the advocates, all the therapists, all the people attending, either on what has helped them in their own journey or what they learned from the event. We're also going to have signs up, like poster boards all over the Gamechangers with interesting questions about OCD, not your quintessential, what is your intrusive thought, but things on the nature of what is the best strength you've learned about yourself because you have OCD? And people will be able to write in what they've learned about themselves, or who is the greatest person that's come into your life because you have OCD. It's not making the I'm so glad I have OCD spin, but it is helping us to see that OCD can bring us things into our life that maybe we miss seeing when we're suffering. So those will be photographed, and they will also be in the journal so you can answer them on your own. And we'll also have some photos and some content and snippets and quotes from the presentations. We're going to scatter those all throughout the journal with places that you can contribute your own stuff. And the campaign I'm running now is for the price of a ticket to the evening event, which is $40, you can email me your own quote of hope and inspiration. I will include that, not only post it up on the walls at Gamechangers, but in the journal itself. And then I will mail you a journal afterwards as complimentary.
Nice. Cool. Well, I will put a link in the show notes to that journal. And obviously people can go to your social medias to find out.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, sounds great. I look forward to it.
And it will actually be on sale afterwards as well. Cool. But this is just kind of like the pre-game. So you can become involved, and your own quote can be in there. By the way, you can do it anonymously. You don't have to use your name. Yeah.
Cool. That makes sense. So, I think you've already alluded to this, but Gamechangers was originally started to kind of empower advocates, bring advocates together from around the world, and obviously from around the States. It's a big country. And get them all in one room before the conference to network, to build connections and support each other, because from time to time it can be a lonely business because you're spread out everywhere, and it can also be quite challenging because you're obviously working with people's anxieties and etc. So I personally found that time very useful. So for like a kind of along those lines then, anyone that's thinking about becoming an advocate, no matter how big or small that is, what kind of words of advice or hope do you have for them?
So you are correct. That is why I started Gamechangers in the first place, for exactly those words. And I'm actually publishing a blog in the next couple days about how lonely advocacy can be. And when you get lonely in advocacy, it can get really tough because you're putting your most vulnerable experiences out to the world and oftentimes not getting the support that you need for how scary that is. I also feel like in the OCD community, up and coming advocates aren't getting the support that they need from some of the bigger organizations that are already established. And so I wanted to definitely put them kind of on the stage to show them that their work matters and to show them and kind of nurture their projects and show that even if you feel like you're not getting support, we've all started from somewhere else. So that's why I've kind of looked for people last year, kind of handpicked, and then this year again, bringing in a few new advocates that yes, they don't kind of have that huge stage yet, but if they have the support of a group of advocates like all of us, they're going to continue to feel inspired and supported and motivated to keep going. So I think that if I had to give advice to someone or, maybe some suggestions in becoming an advocate, it would be definitely do things like come to Gamechangers, network, start to meet the people, because advocates are just like everybody else. People sometimes think, well, you're out there with your story, so you're elevated already. No, we're not. We're like, we are the same as every sufferer. We're that's the bond that we carry with people. So, making kind of the bold, I remember reaching out to Jeff Bell, when I first went to the Atlanta conference. And I was like, oh my God, Jeff Bell's going to meet with me. And I was so terrified. And then I was like, oh, he's a normal human. And he gave me some great suggestions on how to get started and how to do projects and how to network. And I really took that stuff to heart. And because of him, my advocacy started growing. So reach out to people that are doing what you want to do and see if they'll consult with you. See if they'll have coffee with you. Come to the Gamechangers, meet all of us. Everybody here that's coming is humble as shit, and we've all been in the place where we wanted to get started in advocacy, didn't know what the heck to do. And so, I think the main thing, and I think I've said this before, Stu, but if you're starting advocacy for OCD and you're scared, don't ever put anything out to the world that you're not willing to receive negative criticism about. So if you think to yourself, I'm going to throw my story out there and I'm going to talk all about my sexual intrusive thoughts about, incest or pedophilia or whatever else, and you would feel awful if you got negative comments, don't put it out yet.
Yeah, good point.
Start with something a little smaller, because advocacy, if you are in it, it's a lifelong career. And so you've got plenty of time to put everything out there. Start slow, build a community of support of people that are like-minded and motivated, and just keep putting the content out there. Because as we all know, people don't want to click on mental illness stuff because they're afraid if I click like, that means people are going to think I'm nuts. It's just the reality, but the base will build. It took me years to get more than like 10 likes on something. And I wanted to quit several times, like no one's paying attention. And then I'd meet someone out and they're like, that blog you posted 2 months ago, it changed my life. I'm like, yo, why didn't you like it? Well, I didn't want people to see it. So just remembering that people are watching, people are appreciative, and to reach out for the support around you for the people that are doing the things that you want to do. Yeah,
really, really good points. I think just to add to that as well is don't do things for a certain amount of likes on Facebook or certain amount of watches or whatever it is. Do it because you feel compelled. I can't remember compelled to do it. I can't remember who said it. There's some author, and they said I'm paraphrasing, something like the only reason I wrote this book is because I didn't have any choice. And what they mean by that is they couldn't live not putting it out there. Like they didn't particularly want to write a book, but the message of the book was so burning inside them that they had to write it and share it with the world. And it's that's quite an extreme example, but like when I look back to when I started, which was before the OCD Stories, which was just blogging about my own personal journey on my own personal website, which isn't active at the minute, but I was just writing my thoughts and feelings because I wanted to share it with the world, in the hopes, my aim was just the hopes that it inspired someone else or gave someone else an idea on ways of kind of recovering from OCD. That was it. There was no real idea of fame. Obviously, a part of me, like, I think it's human. Oh yeah, I'd love for it to take off, but that wasn't why I did it. It was just to share it, inspire others. So if you've got intentions like that, then you won't get disheartened if it's not taken off, because you will get some interaction, and that will be enough because you're making a difference.
Right.
And then
managing
if it takes, exactly. And then if it takes off, it takes off. But this podcast, I had no intention of it being big. I just wanted to interview people. That was it. And share some messages.
Right. I mean, we all, like, that's what I was saying. Like, all of us that are going to be there, started off with pretty humble, hey, I just want to reach other. I mean, for me, it was, okay, I wasn't very humble. I was selfish. I was like, I want to find people that have sexual, violent, intrusive thoughts, to make me feel better. So that was kind of my selfish motivation. But the more I wrote and put myself out there, and met people, the more humble I did. The more humbling took place, because you really do meet people at all stages of the journey that you've already been on. And what an amazing reflection and an opportunity to be able to inspire and provide hope to people. And then continue on your own journey as you meet people that have far surpassed where you are. So, advocacy is, I guess maybe check the reasons why you're getting into it. It certainly isn't this, oftentimes people are like, well, I want to be an advocate and I want people to, look up to me and all this kind of stuff. And it's not like that. It's tough work. It's oftentimes stretching your own boundaries and being way more vulnerable than you ever thought that you would, and kind of, sometimes sweating it out, waiting to see if anybody responds and understands. Many sleepless nights, many anxiety provoked days of, maybe I said too much, or what if and then there's what if I said something that harms someone? So advocacy is a lifelong commitment, but it's also a lot of growth and a lot of stretching, and you've got to be ready for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, then when those tough times come or those anxieties come, you can face them better because your motivation is that, and not, I want to get 50 likes on that post or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So tell me about the importance of bringing a community together to instill hope, which obviously is what this event's about.
So again, kind of, on a selfish front, I have most of my advocacy really, really has focused on, and as and listeners that know who I am, has really focused on the sexual, violent, blasphemous, intrusive thoughts, which we refer to as Pure O, the nickname for having intrusive thoughts and mental rituals. That, this is the type of OCD that does not get the type of media coverage it needs to have. It doesn't get, people don't know what it is. People don't understand it. There's not enough education. There's not enough people willing to step out and say, I have this, because they're too afraid that people will believe it, yada, yada, yada. I get all that. And I was there for a long time. But as I've started to advocate, and I get hundreds and hundreds of emails worldwide from people just suffering. And Stu, you know this, you get emails too. The suffering is palpable, and I feel like sometimes it's so much I can't give enough. I mean, how much can I give to help people, help relieve suffering or give people hope or anything that I can do? And one of the things I've really seen in just creating my own little bitty community on my YouTube channel or whatever my advocacy is, it's a small community, but it just gives people hope. I rarely have negative comments on my YouTube channel. Every once in a while I will, and they're just trolls, but more than anything, I see people in the comments supporting one another and commenting back to each other and saying, oh my gosh, you're not alone. I experienced this too. I see that in the comments, when I'm doing videos for Mental Health on the Mighty, yada, yada. But I think that realizing that creating that community for people is really kind of the base of, and the base or the bare bones of healing for people. Because even if people can't get treatment, they're not in a position where they can afford therapy or they don't have access to therapy, just really understanding that they're not alone, just being able to jump on a blog. Now, I know that can also be a compulsion, so I'm not encouraging that. But at the same time, there are many times that I just need to know, when I'm really down in the dumps, that what I'm suffering with or what I'm, having anxiety about, that other people have been there too, and that I'm not alone. And I think that's what community does. And to be able to structure out a community on my own in this way of Gamechangers is pulling advocates in, pulling therapists in that are doing groundbreaking, game-changing treatment protocols, or again, like Patrick McGrath, like finally an OCD addiction clinic opening up, Kim Quinlan, creating CBT school and doing all this innovative stuff to reach people all around the world, pulling us all in together on the same page instead of this hierarchy of therapists up here, psychiatrists higher, sufferers way down here, and families even lower. Like, we don't want that. We need a community where everybody is equal and working toward the same goal. And it's all to benefit the people that are suffering and whoever needs support, whether that's the support system. I often feel like when it comes to mental health, there is such a hierarchy, or motives are driven by money, or motives are driven by power, or motives are just driven by ego. And my vision for Gamechangers is to be able to have, yes, probably always in Denver because this is my hometown and I love it, always here, but a traveling Gamechangers maybe in the fall. And we go to all different places. We go all across the nation, to Canada, to the UK, to Australia, wherever we can go, and create communities there as Gamechangers being the catalyst for that. And then how after Gamechangers is done, how does that community stay intact and that grows? And all of a sudden, there's communities everywhere supporting, and with new therapists wanting to know how to treat OCD effectively, and families knowing that they have support, because they're really a forgotten piece in all of this oftentimes, and they don't have the support that they need. So that would be kind of the vision of Gamechangers being the central catalyst to creating community around the world. And then eventually everybody wants to come back to Denver every March and us do a big party and celebrate and, bask in our community of knowing that we're not alone.
Yeah. Nice. I like the vision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as we said at the start, your kind of day job is peer support.
Yes.
So what, you do that a lot. So what have you learned over the last year about peer support?
One of the things I've really learned is peer support is so beneficial when you're living with OCD, especially when you're living with really heavy, scary themes where the emotional part seeps in. You're battling day in and day out, whether you're a bad person because you have horrible thoughts. Peer support is so beneficial to just help people remember they are still intact. They are not their OCD.
Yeah.
They are not their thoughts. Now, I'm not doling out reassurance all over the place. Trust me, and people know that when they meet with me, they're sneaky about it, but about trying to get it. But at the same time, if they know that I have had the same thoughts or I've had the same experiences, they can now see another person that's, oh my gosh, and I don't, they may think I'm a bad person. I don't know, but I don't think Christie's a horrible person. So if she's not, then maybe I'm not. That's what peer support does. And that's how it helps. The other thing I've seen is when therapists finally get on board with it, it takes them sometimes a little while because I think they don't really understand what peer support is. When they finally get on board of it, how wonderful it can help their clients. when their clients get stuck, even in the middle of ERP and they're unwilling to do something, they can call me up. I can have a session with the client, help normalize the process of ERP, and that person can push through ERP, their next exposure. That's been wonderful. Again, kind of the warning, and we've talked about this a lot, is I've also seen that peer support is still very vague for people. They don't understand what it is. So they think, oh, if I have a lived experience, that means that I'm a peer support. So I can just support people because I'm a peer. And what I've learned and really am trying to emphasize is you have got to have training. You have got to have credentials, which is usually a certification in the state that you live. It's got to be behind your name. If someone is offering you peer support, or they're saying they're offering peer support and you desperately need it, you need to ask them for their credentials. Have them show you the certificate if they need to, because I did not know how to do peer support at all until I went through training. I thought I did. And then when I went through training, I was like, oops, I do not know how to do peer support at all. So it's really important. I don't think that getting support from someone could, damage you. But if you're exchanging money with somebody, you really need to know that they know what they're doing, that they've been supervised and trained, and that they're continuing education and, maintaining the value and the ethics of their craft.
Yeah. And just to clarify as well, that peer support isn't therapy.
No, it is not. It's supplemental to therapy.
Yeah.
Any day of the week, I will tell people that they need to get therapy, pay for therapy before they pay for peer support, 100%. And I always, when I'm asked questions of a therapeutic nature, I always refer back to, that's something you need to clarify with your therapist, because I do not provide therapy.
Yeah. And the reason I raise that, I think, because of what I've seen, it appears that some people who aren't therapists are doing therapy disguised as peer support or peer coaches. So just to kind of be on the lookout for that. Cool. Enough said.
Again, make sure that you're looking for people's credentials. There are a lot of people out there that are saying they can treat OCD, and they can't because they're not therapists. And it's gotten a lot of us riled up in the community because we know the danger that can present, and just how unethical it is. So just please make sure that you are asking the people that you're working with and exchanging money. Please make sure that they have the right training, the right certificates and supervision to be able to help you.
Yeah. And I think, if you want to be sure about people's credentials, from a therapist point of view, you can go to the various governing bodies in the various countries listening to see if they if they're accredited. But from like peer support and other stuff, just contact the various charities, the IOCDF, OCD Action, OCD UK, etc., and just get them to sense check it for you. Cool. Just a couple questions towards the end now. Is just sort of any words of hope.
Oh gosh. I think that probably when I think, this would probably be my inspirational quote for the OCD Journal. So I don't really know that yet. Words of hope are just, I think, to kind of circle back to what I was talking about when we first started the podcast, is there's no reason to be afraid of continuing the journey of recovery. We often see recovery, and some people don't even like that word, and I don't care. I use it because it's easier than describing it some other way. It's like Stephen Phillipson with Pure OCD. He's like, I don't care if people don't like that word. It's way easier than violent or sexual intrusive thoughts. Like, come on now. But I think that oftentimes we see recovery, when we hear recovery is a lifelong process, or OCD is a lifelong illness, how daunting and scary that can feel. Because we have lived in this, we've lived in OCD with such urgency just to feel better, that the idea of even suffering even more almost seems like it can tip the scales. But treatment works. finding the right treatment provider, really committing, trusting the process of exposure response prevention, acceptance commitment therapy. It works. But then being able to really live a healthy and full life with OCD, it requires a lifetime commitment. And you know what? That commitment isn't like a shitty marriage that you're day in, day out, hate your spouse. It's not like that, because in all honesty, it really just is between you and your brain. And the real change can happen is, one, when you embrace the emotional piece of it, when you learn to love who you are with this illness, because, oftentimes people will refer to OCD as the beast or the monster and the villain and all that. And I get it. And I need to be in that mindset when I'm fighting OCD. But every single day, if I felt that way about my brain, then I would hate my brain and I would hate myself. And a key essential for me in living in recovery and healing from this, powerful illness is loving who I am with it. Because if I don't love who I am, I can't accept that this is part of who I am. And it's really, really that acceptance piece that helps me every day to think I'm still an okay person, even though I'm waking up with OCD and I'm going to have really scary thoughts today. That doesn't have to be a reflection of who I am as a person. And that has taken me a long time to learn that. And that's why kind of the emphasis is, don't be afraid for recovery to be lifelong and the lessons you're going to learn from it. Because in all honesty, I've grown so much more just by embracing recovery versus denying it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So you've got, you can pick up the phone, call your 20-year-old self. What do you tell her?
Well, if I call my 20-year-old self, I would be like, don't attempt suicide. Because that happened when I was 20. So there's that. God, there was so much I would tell her, because that was a really crappy year. God, I would definitely say your hair gets better as you age. Go into EMDR trauma therapy now. No, what I would tell my 20-year-old self, especially in such a fragile time for me, that was the year my cousin died. That was the year I attempted suicide, the worst year of my OCD life. If I could go back and sit down with her, I may just say to her, you may not believe me, and it may seem really scary, but call Dr. Stephen Phillipson and visit. It was OCDzone.com back then. Go there and reach out for help. I will tell you, I bought in so much to the OCD illness then that I don't know if I would do it even if I could go back and tell her that. You know what I mean? I was so bought in. That's why I say I don't know if she would listen or not, but I would say reach out. You're safe and it's okay. Because I think a lot of people struggle with that even when they know or they can identify with OCD symptoms, they're scared to reach out because they don't think it's safe. And I feel like I would be too afraid that it wasn't safe. And so I would tell her that, and I'm telling all the listeners here that. Reach out to somebody who specializes in OCD, and it's okay to feel safe with them because you are safe. And they're going to get it. They're going to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, is there anything else that you haven't said that I wish you'd asked? That you get what I'm saying? Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, not really. Just want to thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure being on the show, but also thank you for giving me the opportunity to market a little for the event. I think it's going to be great. And for those of you that can't attend, it is in 2 weeks. So I know that's still, short notice to jump on a plane, but you're more than welcome. If you can't attend, but you really want to contribute or be part of it, right now there's the opportunity to do to send me a quote, the Journal of Hope. You'll get that in return. It's $40. And then after the event, you either have the option to buy the journal itself or the video. which was hugely inspiring for people, and hopefully it will be again this year. So,
Yeah.
But Stu, as always, thank you for all you do. I cannot wait till you're out here in 2 weeks and 1 day. I'll be picking you up from the airport right now. Oh my God. Can't wait.
I look forward to it.
I'll try to contain like screaming when I see you.
Thank you. And the crying, please. No, I don't want to stigmatize crying.
You're stigmatizing my emotions.
You release what you need to. So yeah, thank you as always for coming on. I've enjoyed it, and I'm sure people will have enjoyed it and maybe learn some stuff too.
Good. Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
So there you have it. Really hope you enjoyed my conversation with Chrissie, and all details on how to get Gamechangers tickets and be involved will be on her site, chrissiehodges.com, or go to the OCDstories.com to find out more. Thank you as always, and quick disclaimer, this podcast is not therapy, it's not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.